Good evening, everyone. We are live. TRH, the Reconnection Hour by Mr. Perfect. Sorry, we're a little bit late tonight. A couple of tech issues, but it's all good. Fashionably late. I'm Terry, founder and CEO of Mr. Perfect, as most of you will know. What's Mr. Perfect? Well, we bring men together at barbecues to create communities and connection for the betterment of mental health and to reduce isolation. What's TRH? Well, something we've been doing now for, maybe over 6 months now. A weekly hour chat on a Thursday night across our social channels. We chat sometimes to health professionals, GPs, psychologists, psychiatrists, some of the leading ones as well in Australia, which is amazing, and ask them their advice and stories. But we also chat to other people doing incredible things in the world of connection, men's health, and mental health. A little bit of a disclaimer. We obviously do chat about mental health, men's health, a few other things. If anything is likely to trigger, we don't normally go too gory, but just to let you know that we will discuss mental health at some stage. How's my week been? Well, it's been pretty good, a bit challenging, but a couple of good things that have been happening in the Mr. Perfect world. We have our partnership with Aussie Veterans Coffee Company, which has kicked off, and already I've seen people posting pictures of the coffee bags they bought, which is amazing, and I've been told it tastes damn good, so very happy with that. You can use the code Mr. Perfect when you log out, when you check out to buy the coffee, and you'll that will benefit us as well. So I'll put the link for that on the socials again shortly. I had a COVID test this week, just to be sure. I'd had a lot of colds this year, wasn't feeling too great, and you can probably hear it in my voice, but thankfully it's negative. Wasn't too bad of an experience, so it was fine. A couple of things we've been working on this week. Some of sort of personal development at work actually got me to think a lot about purpose and why I'm doing what I'm doing, and getting a bit more energy into what I do, a little bit more mental energy, and believing in myself a bit more, which has been pretty beneficial. Also tomorrow I'm going camping on a bit of an adventure. I've never felt like I was a stereotypical man or that masculine as has been dictated to us. But I'm creative, but I'm not the greatest at manly pursuits, shall I say. So I've changed that a little bit. I've gone camping a couple of times this year and doing some things, but I'm going bush tomorrow and roughing it. So I'll be out of reach for a few days, which will be cool. So that's it. That's me. That's the week. That's Mr. Perfect. Tonight we are chatting with someone I've had some communication with over, I guess, probably the past year on and off. Someone I've known of the work they're doing in men's health generally, and always watched from afar and was really intrigued by it. He is the founder of It's a Blokes Lunch. His name is Josh Tree. And this is an annual event that has been a huge success in recent years. I know it's not the only thing he does, and I'm going to let him tell us a bit more about why he does it. So welcome, Josh.
Thanks,
How
Terry.
are you, mate?
I'm good. Yourself?
Yes, good. Feeling a bit better now. I had as I said, the COVID test this week. Took it out of me a bit, but people were sort of telling me horror stories about the swab and how it's really uncomfortable, and it wasn't actually that bad. I don't know, maybe I'm used to visiting too many medical facilities, but it was fine. So yeah, how's your week been?
Okay. Good. That's good.
Good stuff. Now, why are we here? Well, look, we want to know about It's a Blokes Lunch, but we also want to know about, normally we ask our guests to tell our audience about you, a little bit about your background, as much or as little as you want. I guess how you got to where you are now, what you do professionally, and how you started It's a Blokes Lunch.
Yeah, fantastic. So, look, my background is I actually work as an exercise physiologist by trade. So I actually do work with people with physical health and mental illness on a day-to-day basis. And for me, it's something that I've been passionate about for a long while. I've been doing that for almost 10 years. Prior to that, what sort of led me to that sort of career was a love of sport, passion of sport. I was a semi-professional, professional athlete in the NRL. playing lower grades. I never played a first grade game. I can't sort of attribute anything like that, but certainly played with a lot of guys that went on to play first grade and coached a lot of guys that went on to play first grade. I had something that sort of happened to me. An incident off the field that sort of led me to change my career, and it sort of impacted my mental health back then. But things were sort of happening before that sort of incident occurred. And it was really just a conversation with with the CEO at the club at the time. I was a lower grades player for the West Tigers. And that sort of led me to a career in coaching as a strength and conditioning coach, and then decided to go and do my bachelor's degree in sport and exercise science, went on and did a master's in clinical exercise physiology, and been working in exercise physiology ever since. And I guess in that sort of career, you see and hear thousands of stories of guys going through cancer, or going through mental health, or going through various sort of physical ailments, or having a horrific car accident or motorbike accident. And sort of having to work with them, not only looking at the condition itself, but also treating the person at the same time, and providing that physical and emotional support along the way. Apart from that, more recently, I'm sort of also in the work health and safety space and return to work space. And I am also a mental health first aid instructor. So I actually lead courses and sort of work on the mental health literacy and having the tools in the toolkit, so to speak, to be able to have conversations with mates and having conversations with even work colleagues and friends and family. They might be going through a mental, might be having a mental health problem, and be able to better engage them towards professional help. In terms of the Blokes Lunch, really how that started is a conversation over a couple of coffees with a couple of business mates down in Wollongong. And leading up to that, really, we're actually sharing stories. So I was sharing my personal challenges that sort of led me to wanting to do more in the local community. And the reason why I was wanting to do more in the local community is, as a health professional, there's only so many sessions you can work with clients on Medicare before you have to look at discharging, and working in Illawarra and working even in Southwest Sydney. Social economic disadvantagement is a big one. So you're often seeing clients on bulk bill referrals because they can't always be engaged as a private client. And then as a health professional, you're always trying to look for services to be able to discharge them to. And the challenge with men's health in local communities, and probably on a broader scale and on a state level and a national level, is limited services you can actually refer them to. In the Illawarra, there's 3 women's health services that you could refer a client to. There's 0 in the Illawarra, and there's the same in Southwest Sydney. So the Blokes Lunch really started to look at changing all that. And over the last 3 years, we've not only led conversations, but we've also funded programs and funded to non-for-profit organisations, but also funded some grassroots projects over the years as well. And we're sort of we're at a stage now where we're sort of producing all these additional campaigns and services to better support men and have men in mind.
Brilliant. No, I love it. And as I said, it caught my eye when I first saw it, the Blokes Lunch sort of website, when I was doing a bit of research on men's health initiatives and the like. And the reason it first caught my eye, it was something a bit superficial, was you had the guy from The Bachelor on it a few years. He was maybe he went to last year's one. I couldn't remember his name. Tim. That's the one. Tim. Yeah, now, I thought my wife would love that. If I
actually met him at a charity event off the streets, and he showed me the beta test of his app, the Robarbs method. We'll talk and shop about exercise science, because his background as an exercise scientist before becoming a chiro. I won't hold that against him. But he was there. He was there with Anna and a few other Bachelor people on this table, and we kept in touch ever since, and then got engaged in the first Blokes Lunch. Yeah,
amazing. Yeah, so that again, that was more of a superficial thing why it caught my eye, but I was amazed at I guess it looked like quite a big production, and it looked like it would take a lot of work to get it going. And I know with some of these events just that we do it's a lot of heart and soul goes into it, and a lot of time, effort, lots of no's, and getting knockbacks and organisation as well. So I was curious to know, I guess, why did you choose that format, or what's the format, and why did you choose it? So if you explain how the actual lunch works and the speakers and things like that.
Well, when I was having a chat, so initially a good friend of mine who's actually is still a reporter for the local Illawarra Mercury put me in touch with his editor, and I had a meet with him at the offices there down at the Illawarra Mercury, and he began to share his story. Julian, his name is. He began to share his story about having a heart attack, and this is a guy in his 40s with a couple of kids, and we spoke about the fact that there's not a lot of support services for guys in the area, and one of those sort of stigma things that obviously gets brought up quite often is about blokes not engaging men's health services. Now, as a men's health professional, I can tell you they do. It's just there's not really that much ongoing support, and we've got a system that doesn't adequately support guys at present compared to. And certainly, even in my own lived experience, seeing a mental health professional, it took me 6 months to see a psychologist personally. So, you've got a system that doesn't really support blokes adequately enough, and we wanted to sort of change that. So that conversation with the editor of the Merc led to a conversation with the general manager at the Novotel, and that led to a few other conversations with a couple of business people in the local area that I knew. So I sort of tapped into a little bit of my network that I had from my health business, and I was actually expecting a few no's along the way, but I didn't get any. I got a lot of yeses. And I suppose the big reason why we end up going with something is we originally were talking about almost doing like a expo or like dinner sort of expo thing, and frankly, Greg is one of the journos down the Merc. Actually, before I even met with the editor, he actually introduced me to some of the old. I think they'd actually previously had a men's health event down there before. He actually introduced me a couple of the old advisory group from that old event, and they took me through what worked, what didn't work, and found that there was challenges sustaining it over a period of time in terms of the dinner led by Expo and how it all worked, and there seemed to be a lot of expense. That seemed to be the biggest challenge with what happened before, and also just people getting tired because that production was even more exorbitant than what we had with the Blokes Lunch. Well, the reason why we went with the Blokes Lunch is there's not a lot of Blokes Lunches happening anywhere. In the Illawarra, there's a women's lunch happening every month, but there's no Blokes Lunches. So as soon as I spoke about the idea of a Blokes Lunch, everyone was on board and just said yes about time.
Yeah.
And it just cut out a lot of the production stuff that you have involved with dinners and all the other sort of stuff. So we run pretty lean with what we actually have involved behind the scenes. Also, we had we do have some production support, but that's sort of that's with support from the Novotel, who have been a great sponsor of ours since the start. And so in terms of the actual event itself, it runs pretty lean. And the purpose really of that is we want to try and get as much of the support that's being generated from ticket sales and sponsorship, and those two things, ticket sales and sponsorship, and obviously your traditional sort of fundraising that takes place on the day, which doesn't include donations. It's all, they're buying stuff and supporting that way and buying merchandise and that sort of stuff to the end cause and the grassroots programs. So there's definitely a lot of time and investment on my part to do the Blokes Lunches every year, but frankly, I don't mind doing that because for me, I get a real kick out of helping people, and that's why I'm in the health industry, is about helping blokes.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I was just thinking then as you were talking about the format, because there's the reason I think I know this works, or maybe it's just justification. I was invited to go to an EPL soccer lunch pre-COVID. I think it was in January or February, by a group of guys who set up in Sydney, like business guys or just worked in, whatever industry it was. And they one day said, "Oh, we don't really have it. There's a rugby one, but there isn't a soccer one set up." So, set up this soccer, thing, and they just thought, "Oh, we'll get a few people to it around the table. Let's see what happens." It's now become this membership-based. You can't, it's so in demand to get there. Or it was pre-COVID. There was a wait list for people to go to this lunch, and all they really did was have a drink and chat and whatever. But the actual stories and the things that came out of it, of course, they talk about football and they have guests to talk and everything else, but they weren't really there for the football. It was it was a chance to be around other blokes and chat. And I actually had a mate go to one of them quite recently, or used to go quite regularly, and he said actually the connection they made with people there, the people they met, etc., it wasn't specifically about mental health, but more or less that seemed to come up at some point. And especially amongst the speakers who sometimes were ex-sportsmen, right? So when you actually ask them once they've retired their story, it's not as pretty as it's been made out to be while it was going on. And they're obviously not going to talk about it while they're, vying for a first team place. So that I can see why it works, and the simplicity of it. And I love things like that, as in the simplicity of the idea to get people together. I can see why that works, which is very cool. I was going to ask, I guess, what's discussed? How does that format work? Is it someone emceeing and asking questions of the guests, or is there a theme, or how does that work?
So the event itself, I guess we sort of broadly cover men's health, but we specifically target cancer, mental health, and preventative health. They're the three things that we look at. And even when we're looking at panelists, we do have sportsmen on there. As far as the Bachelor connection, we've had 2 bachelors on there as well. We've had Tim and we've had Sasha. We've friends. We've had quite a few sportsmen involved. So we've had Sean Timmins from the Dragons on the first year, and we've had a couple of ex-military guys that were friends of mine involved. Scotty Evernet, who's known as the Commando on Ninja Warrior, and a good mate of mine, Chief Brayborn, who's a celebrity trainer, but he's a ex-infantry sniper. So they sort of share their stories of obviously service and then post-career. And then we also have health professionals in there. We sort of try and keep it balanced in that sense. In terms of sportsmen, we've also had Dougie Bollinger there as well. So there's been some characters there. I've also forgotten Jamie Soward. He's in there as well. So I've had some characters in the sporting scene. And I suppose what we try and look at charismatic leaders with story. And the day's really led by narrative. Led by story. So not only do we have those sort of iconic figures in the room and health professionals in the room, we also have people who have actually got real lived experience talking on the day, sharing their story. And that in itself has then led to community support and establishing other initiatives. So, for example, first year we had, I think, Top Blokes. They had a speaker there, and obviously had one of their guys who'd been through their mentoring programs share his story and sort of garner support with those guys first year. And then we had a prostate cancer survivor the second year who was wanting to establish a support group for prostate cancer survivors and their partners, and we were actually able to help them do that. So because before then, I think there'd been a group before, but it sort of ran its course and sort of hadn't been around for a few years. But obviously with the support in the room and the local connections, including government parliamentarians that attend the event as well, they were able to obviously establish that Illawarra prostate cancer support group. And then last year we had another prostate cancer survivor as well sharing his story. Because we all, I suppose we sort of, the last two, that prostate cancer survivor, the last guy who spoke, is actually then closely connected to the group, which is why we sort of not only chose him for that reason, but also we wanted to share his story as someone who'd been more recent, a younger guy, father with a few kids, and wanting to sort of make that connection in the room and sort of encourage some of the younger guys in the room to get their prostate checked as well. So to in short, the day's 100% led by story. And even some of the health professionals that do speak on the day, they sort of switch between not only their professional sort of experiences, but also their personal experiences. And that's sort of those conversations that take place also sort of encourage the shoulder-to-shoulder conversations that take place in the room as well. And we've seen a lot of guys who have attended those events then, either spark additional men's health connections or sort of initiatives, or it's sort of inspired them to have a conversation with a mate or have a conversation with their GP to be on the forefront of their own personal health.
And isn't it amazing how we need, I don't know why it is, but us guys need that constant reminder. Like we don't, I'm in this for the last 5 years, access professional help myself for, probably a similar amount of time, but I still need that nudge to be reminded whether I go to an event or I'm doing this, talking to someone, or a friend of mine is going through something at that time, or whether it's a physical or mental issue. We still need that nudge to then go, oh yeah, I should bring that person, or I should go myself to get checked for X, or I should do this. It still amazes me how we need to keep reinforcing that. No matter even being involved in this, I'm around it every day and I hear it and see it. Yeah, I'm not always doing it myself. So it's amazing, because I think those sort of events that then spark a conversation are brilliant. And you said about the story aspect. Well, I think I'm so organized in my own head and very sort of anal about certain things and the way things are run in like the background and even with charity. But really, that's just organization for me. Even when I do this tonight, I always have like a list of stuff ready and the format and everything, but I rarely ever go off it, because once a story gets flowing and you talk to someone, you ask them a question, it can go in a number of different directions, and it's so more organic and real, and it flows then. And you mentioned the health professionals about their personal stories as well. When I've had some GPs on here and doctors and even psychiatrists who one of the sort of leading ones in the country, and some of the things he was opening up about his own story, like it was, I just sitting there like gently, like, wow, silent for like 10 minutes. It was incredible. It made me think a lot, and a lot of parallels with people I knew. And so on that story note, I was wondering if there was any particular stories that you can remember from the last Blokes Lunches that really, I don't know, stood out or really sort of caused the room to completely stop or sparked a lot of conversation. Is there any particular ones?
Well, I never expected this. This isn't a particular story, but I never expected this. But the funniest guy in the room on the day was actually a urology radiation expert that we had on the panel. He was cracking a few one-liners about checking your nuts and taking some time to feel down there and all that sort of stuff. So that certainly engaged the room. But last year we actually had on our panel we had Scott Henderson, who's the editor of Men's Health. So he shared quite a few of his own, obviously, stories that had been engaged in the magazine itself, and obviously his own personal experiences about keeping active. I don't think he had from memory, he didn't have a personal mental health story. He was more there as a preventative health speaker. We had Zach Sedler there, from Movember. He was one of our speakers last year as a clinical psychologist, and he was sort of sharing, obviously redacted, of course, but sharing experiences within clinic about patient experience, certainly around the 6-month wait, which I'd experienced as well, and even losing his own father to suicide, and then providing that connection with the room. And that really touched me personally, because it's about 5 years ago, actually, not 7 years ago, I actually lost a mate to suicide. And it was something that was spoken about before the first Blokes Lunch at a school reunion. It was our 10-year reunion, something like that. I can't remember. I'm too old anyway. But no, just someone like Zach, for example, who a lot of people in the men's health land know, sharing that experience with the audience, and then also sharing his own experience there as well, and obviously experiencing clinic about patient wait times and us as a collective needing to do more around that. That sort of really connected well with me. And I guess our doctor in the preventative, in the cancer preventative space, sharing stories around patient experiences that he's had in early detection, and even sort of some of those conditions that have sort of been left too long and manifested to a point where they'll going through the hard time to fight the battle. Really connected with me as well, because I've seen those firsthand as an allied health professional.
Yeah, and again, whether it's mental or physical, I was kind of reflecting a lot on this week when I was sick, and I used to do stupid things like go and train or go and play football when I'd literally just come off the back of a virus or whatever, and just thinking, oh no, like I'll go to work or I'll go and train and do this. And the amount of times I passed out or did really stupid stuff and didn't go and get something checked. And I was told consistently for the last, God knows, 20 years, that just go to the GP. Just go to the GP next day. And even now I do it. I'm a lot better now. Like I've now got a great GP I can just go to. Yet still I'll use an excuse as a barrier not to go. And before you know it, that stress, that normally it's mental related for me, but I know then the signs have come on so much that I'm in that, I wouldn't say crisis state. I don't tend to get in that anymore, but I'm in that state where I'm not in a great place. I've ticked off all the signs to know my head's not in a great space. And then I remember what my psychologist says to me, and he says, don't come to me in crisis. And he doesn't say it in a blunt way. He does say it in a blunt way. He's great like that, but he says it in a way to say, this is not supposed to be for crisis. Like there's the work we do and like the tools I can help you with. And he's incredible anyway. And, has helped me a lot to get me to a much better place. He said, he goes, I'm not putting myself down. He goes, I know I'm good, but he says, I'm, 20, 30% of your toolbox. Like it should be, you need to be doing all the other things right as well. Like seeing your GP, doing that exercise, having time to yourself, de-stressing, making sure you're not going too hard at work, spending time with your family. And before you know it, it's so easy to let those things slip, so easy. And it always slips me back to that point of, it's almost in my head, I go, well, that's too late to reach out to, what's my psychologist going to do when I'm in crisis, He wants to see me when I'm kind of thriving, or at least at that point where we're in a routine, and I'll leave it a long time before I go. And I think that's just the theme I see in some of even the people I admire the most, who are, the healthiest, I guess. We don't seem to prioritize enough our health yet. We're still not there. We talk about it. We're a lot better at talking about it now, that's for sure. It's been a massive improvement in that. But the action part is like where we just can't get over that wall sometimes. And do you have experiences of people who have sort of attended the event? They come to you afterwards and sort of told their stories or reached out afterwards?
Yep. Yeah. So definitely straight after. I'm usually there having conversations with people in the room, and I'm happy to do that. I see a lot of value in doing that, and that's what the event's about. Is about inspiring, encouraging people to share their story. So that's what I'm there for. I'm happy to do that. And going back to, I guess, one of the things you mentioned in just a moment ago, even as a health professional, we have those days where we're going through it. I know I have my system that I try and follow to maintain good health, and obviously things can disrupt that. And one of the big things I try and teach my patients is about having those self-management strategies and trying to be in a position where if we have a relapse, then we've got the system there to try and pick ourselves back up again and work on those tools and utilize those tools in the toolkit to be able to bring us back to sort of square one. And that's something that there's moments where I forget about that, and there's moments where I have to remind myself. So it's there's moments where you have to coach. The coach needs to coach themselves.
Yeah.
And I suppose even when I'm working with patients, I sort of share that with my patients as well, that no one's perfect and no one expects you to be, but we just want to try and sort of skill you to the point where you're able to I guess, identify what's happening and have the systems that are there to be able to pick yourself back up and know how to do that and effectively become an expert in being able to treat yourself.
Yeah, and I love the way you just said that. That's so true. And because it used to be in my head when I first accessed help, it was, oh, this is what you do. You let it get to this point, and you go and get professional help from a clinician, and then that's it. Like they'll solve it, or they'll give you some medication, they'll do so, and that's it. There's nothing else to this piece of the puzzle. And it was good. The feeling of getting off my chest was incredible, like unbelievable. Eventually, after I'd sort of let it all out. But then there was this very empty thought of, well, now I've got to be a dad. Now I'm going to do, all these things and have a proper job. And how am I going to cope like the next X amount of years? Like that scary thought. And it took me a while. It took me even doing Mr. Perfect. It took me 2 years into it to sort my own kind of routine out. And there's a couple of things you said. One, the guys telling you their stories after the event. I get that with the barbecues. I asked that question because I can kind of see what telling someone's story does in a I don't know how to put it, when it's delivered in a way that's authentic and it's not even scripted sometimes, and you can see the person's brain kind of wearing away, and then they've had their own story, or they go, oh, it's okay to like say it, or at least, come and say, and they found people at the end of the barbecue who told their story or had a chat and just said, thank you so much for doing that. And I've just said a tiny bit about their story. And they go away with this, like, you can tell the weight's kind of lifted a bit. They're not as tense. They're not as...
They shake the arm. Yeah, they shake the arm and disarm and remove the guard and just share what's going on. Absolutely.
And in a really... I'm amazed, even because I'm not trained in anything at all with these sort of conversations. I've had enough that I know how to deal with them. But I am amazed at what that simple act can do. And, like, just to see them walk away and... I don't know, like, I don't know if I may be imagining it, but I certainly feel good about it, and they can feel that energy from it, and their shoulders have lifted. And when they leave that barbecue or leave that room with just that gives me a little bit of hope. Then it's up to them. Like, they've got to do there's some hard yards in there, but that's really cool. That's like I call it the soft entry, like, the gateway to something. And if we can get that and get people on that journey and then try and coax them. But I've done the same. You said about telling your, patients and clients, you remind yourself that you can sound such an expert at it and almost fool people. I fool people with my knowledge or my talk about what I think I know, what maybe other people could do, or sharing the story, or whatever it might be. But really, there's a lot of self-accountability as well. I think I've noticed that even more the last year. Like, a lot of accountability comes to, you can get people to sort of, like you take a horse to water, so to speak. And I see that over and over again. So on the upside, I'm really happy the last few years we've moved a good chunk of men to that next stage. It's not nowhere near done. This is like a generational, I think, effort. You can't give it up. You can't chuck the towel in now, because it's, I feel like when I speak to guys like you, like, this is just the beginning, really. There's a lot more to do, but it's a really good start. One of our barbecue hosts has commented and asked, James, who's our Lake Macquarie barbecue host, what's your dream to achieve? And I mean, I assume he means what's your dream for the ultimate dream, I guess, of what It's a Blokes Lunch can achieve.
I suppose for me that the dream for the Blokes Lunch was, I guess, to be, I think one of the things I'm really proud of with the Blokes Lunch is just become somewhat of an awakening or a lightning rod in the local community about doing more in the space of men's health. There's certainly been a lot more conversation, and we're really supportive with the fact that even like the Illawarra Mercury now write a lot more stories about men's health and the men's health initiatives locally in the community before that, compared to what used to happen. There used to be, certainly in the local medium perspective with Win and Nine and sort of the local media, it tended to gear towards a lot of articles and stories around women and women's health and that position. And it's good to have that, see that balance occurring more in the area, and there's certainly a lot more awareness of it. In terms of ultimate dream, with the Blokes Lunch, I suppose it's something that's it's a work in progress, really, in terms of where it ultimately wants to go. I think for me, I think what we're going to probably do with the Blokes Lunch, we've had 3 years crack at delivering it in November, and I think what we will do is actually make it the region's first International Men's Day event, because there isn't one. There's an International Women's Day event down there, and we want to try and really give having something like that that's already established a well-founded platform. We actually want to try and make that a stronger platform for blokes in the local area. And I suppose what we do want to do alongside that is actually then create some awareness about some of the stuff that's actually happening in the area. And it might actually be that we tweak the event a little bit, so we actually recognise those that are doing amazing things in the area as part of that event. So I'd say that's where the Blokes Lunch is heading. Outside of that, we've got a whole bunch of smaller spin-off events where we're continuing the conversation in lead up to that event every year, and that's probably the ultimate goal, is not just wait to November to talk about men's health, but have regular conversations around men's health, which we're kind of doing that already through Barstool sort of brothers initiative down in where we're having those sort of regular meetups or catch-ups over a burger and a drink and a good yarn, shoulder-to-shoulder yarn, obviously 1.5 metres away from mate at the moment, but all COVID shoulder-to-shoulder. And then beyond that, what we are doing is heading more into the education space around wanting to engage or improve the mental health literacy in sport, in education, in the workplace. The big conversations that need to be had. So we're also thinking a bit laterally around where the Blokes Lunch takes place and how the Blokes Lunch takes place. And it's certainly got us thinking about, not everyone can make it. So how would we try and ways to bring it to them? And that might be actually doing that in a digital sense and creating packs where workplaces are having a Blokes Lunch whilst the Blokes Lunch is actually taking place, that sort of thing.
Yeah. No, I love it. The first thing you were saying about the local aspect hit home for me, because I think if I can relate it to what we've done when we started, we didn't have a vision that this would be, nationwide and there'd be barbecues everywhere. There was no strategy for that whatsoever. That just kind of went, and then we went, okay, well then maybe we need a few more in New South Wales, a couple in Queensland, and it's kind of happened fairly organically with some planning now. But the stories I get weekly, like week in, week out, are so different from, not so different, but there's a theme to the different communities they're in, whether they're socio-economically challenged, whether they're in a rural area, whether they're in a city. Ironically, in the city, I think the guys feel most lonely. I think I found anecdotally, which is a really strange one, which kind of says a lot about our society, I guess. But what I found, and I've reminded myself more, I was listening to a podcast a few months ago. It was a bit of a sort of cheesy quote, but it was like, think globally and like act locally. So as soon as like my headspace went to, okay, well, we need just one in Northern Territory because we haven't got one, or we need one in Adelaide because we haven't got one, I kind of pulled myself back and was reminded that everything that happens kind of spins around our barbecue host and how much they know their local area and how much they reach out to local businesses, to local sports clubs, to we call them MPs, or whatever it might be, the local government. What I've realised is that is far more important than us being able to target some online advertising to that area. Like we can have that, but the local aspect and the challenges they all face individually, there is nothing better than when I get like a message saying like, oh, 25 of the community came, and it included a couple of kids as well, and they had a game of cricket afterwards. And then outside of that, we've also met for a coffee in the week. And that happens quite a bit in our regional barbecues as well. So I'm always kind of torn between I guess the answer to that is getting more people who know the local area. But when you sort of realize the area where you are needs it the most, absolutely, like giving people a pat on the back for what they're doing locally it's great to have the how can I put it, like the PR around just having a good sort of face and person speaking. But I think recognizing there are some ridiculously good people in these local towns areas doing amazing work with no fanfare. And I think sometimes we need to nurture those guys a bit more because they truly know those communities well. Like they truly get it and what's happening mentally there. So I was going to sort of lead on to that and say, in the Illawarra, do you think there's any particular sort of causes of why you think there's challenges there, or have you identified them, or how do you think you can go about changing them? What would be your action plan if you could change them?
I think there's a real need in one of the things we're actually going to target through our Barstool Blokes initiative is having more conversations. Well, originally we started that as a burger night type thing. However, it's rapidly evolving into the concept of, well, a bar stool can be anywhere. It can be in a sports club. It can be in a restaurant. It can be at home. So the biggest cause or challenge at the moment is having the tools to have a conversation with a mate. I mean, to give you an example of what I'm talking about, so Men's Health Week, when we got when we had a bit of success in terms of identifying what we did during the week, I lost two mates. I actually lost a mate to very close mate of mine to his battle with cancer, and I lost someone I knew really well in the football community down in Illawarra to suicide. And what that sort of made me realise is we need to do a lot more work around having those, and being someone who's actually played football at a local level in Group 6 in down the Illawarra. One of the things, and also just having my WHS return to work sort of head-on and clinical head-on as well, is giving, workplaces from a small business perspective, and also sporting clubs the tools to be able to better engage with people within their networking community. So one of the things we're actually going to try and do is actually get a lot of education resources into workplaces, into schools, schools in the sense of TAFE and university at that older, mature level, because I think there's a lot of support certainly around youth mental health, but I don't think there's enough support in that sort of, I like to call it, so for younger men, I call them younger men or emerging men, certainly as you sort of leave high school and you're going into TAFE or university or starting your first job, those sort of establishing men or professional type men, there's not a lot of services or support or engagement that they can reach out to, and I think that's where the greatest need is. So that's why we're wanting to engage in the sense of working with sporting clubs to give them that mental health literacy around better engagement with their players, especially down the Illawarra. You've got blokes that are working in coal mines or trucking or in the trades, that sort of stuff. And even when I was working in professional sport as a strength and conditioning coach, your Premier League side, or your State Cup, as it was known back then, were guys who weren't full-time athletes. There might have been a couple of guys there that were full-time athletes in your squad, but then the majority of it was made up of guys who were on the tools all day or driving a rig or whatever, coming to training for 2-3 hours busted from a hard day's work. And for me, there wasn't a lot of resource support around well-being. So what we're wanting to do is create these champions within the club that can actually lead that and lead those conversations and keep an eye on guys within their community. And I suppose, in a sense, if we do that enough, sporting club to sporting clubs, small business to small business, university, TAFE college, etc., impacting those smaller ecosystems, so to speak, or those smaller environments, I actually think it's the bit that you do in the backyard that makes the biggest difference and can lead to those bigger changes more I guess, regionally, in a state-based, nationally, and sort of globally in that sense. So I suppose, in a way, if you're going to change the world, start in your backyard.
Yeah, 100%. It's got me thinking about it when I heard that quote as well, because I've moved from, I used to live lower North Shore in Sydney, and I've moved to Northern Beaches a couple of years ago. And I'm now acutely aware. I walk around like my neighborhood a lot. I'm a bit of an old man like that. I love to just walk everywhere. And I'm very acutely aware now of what's available locally and what's not. Yet I'm not really doing anything locally. It just so happens that, you know, Mr. Purvey is headquartered on the Northern Beaches, but I get this urge all the time, like to do, whether it's real simple stuff like beach cleanups with my boys or something. I see, like, you know, the local community not being looked after in that sense, or I'm seeing something, you know, I'm seeing drug issues or something further down the road or whatever it might be. And it's always something that pulls me back. And I think your point is just so well made. A top-down approach is great for awareness, right? That's the problem is, I say the problem, use better language than that. The opportunity is we've done that. We've overdone it. We've saturated up here, and we've thrown money at it, and we've thrown PR at it, and we've created all the awareness that everyone can have in their face daily. But it really is not going to change unless you are doing that on a specific level, like you said. Having a person, I'm thinking of my own football team right now. There's some great new guys I play with, over 35's team. I'm the youngest guy there, and some really great guys. And I'm already thinking of the person who kind of does this anyway. He is kind of the leader in that respect. He takes guys on a Friday morning, like for a run, surf, walk, coffee, whatever it might be. And he just does it. Like, it's kind of evolved a bit more formally now, but he does it. And the amount of guys that actually just come along informally because they're going through a divorce, because they're going through something, struggling, they've lost their job or they've lost their way or whatever it might be, just had their first kid. He's already doing it, like seed level, like putting it in there so that you hope that spreads. And it's a little bit of a responsibility, right, on that person, but he's taken it on himself to do it. And I think that's what you need more of. You're right. In a small club, in a school, that's what you need. And you can only do that. Scaling that is hard, of course, but it is by that example that you will then build it back up. Because in the middle, we've got nothing, right? Like it's like a lot up here, a little bit down here. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I suppose for me, I guess one of the core things that I pick up from my own event is the charismatic leaders, right? So, and as a guy going through professionally, I was always surprised there wasn't enough nurturing and mentoring of younger guys. So you see a lot of, I guess one of the things you mentioned about causes. One of the causes that I am always confuffled by, or that sort of strikes me to the core, is there's a lot of, and I think it's great that it happens, but there's a lot of mentoring type programs for women in the community, but there aren't as many or any for blokes. And it just seems to be, I mean, as an emerging guy through to established guy, it seems to be a sense of, like, I speak from my own experience really in what I'm saying, but I suppose it's more of a she'll be right attitude in the sense of you'll work it out rather than, I suppose where I can draw that comparison is I can think back to when I was playing, or made the transition from playing to coaching. What helped me the most was having some great mentors around me that had been through what I'd been through. And one of the sort of big leaders I had, Harvey Howard, as an ex-English prop, and played for the Broncos under Wayne Bennett and obviously for West and a few others. One of the quotes he always used to say to me is, those on the road ahead, ask those on the road back. And that's always stuck with me about, I guess, engaging or having those mentors to engage with, to converse and sort of have those, I guess, have a sounding board for when things arise. And, I mean, even going to my professional career, I've had those initial mentors to get started to, learn my craft, so to speak. And I just don't think there's as many those mentoring programs or communities for guys to actually, engage with and learn their craft. And that's where that sort of can add to and contribute to some of the mental illness that occurs within the local community. And getting back to, kind of going off on a tangent on that point, but
no, it's a good point. Very good.
Where I'm going to come back to is like any, I guess, in respect to like what you're doing and what we're hoping to do is we want to try and build that network of charismatic leaders for people to engage with, because you're right. Who better to engage with than the person who knows the community best, rather than me going into. I know a lot of communities. I have a lot of networks in a lot of communities from my professional sense, and I've been in the spectrum of working in rural communities to the metro communities, and I know there's a different language and dialect and engagement from one to the other. But who better to engage with than someone who's already engaged and has the finger on the pulse and understands the community better than someone who's actually there. So certainly if we can be in a position where we can give them the tools to better engage those conversations with blokes in the local area and help them sort of start up a Blokes Lunch or start one of our mini events like a Blokes Chat or a Barstool Blokes or whatever, that's what we want to do. Rather than trying to do everything on yourself. I suppose there was a good quote last couple of months. If you want to go fast, you go by yourself. If you want to go far, you need to go as a cohort or as a go.
I've found someone said that to me very recently, and I'm the worst for it. I'm the big hypocrite in that. I guess I've done it fairly well with Mr. Perfect, but I've always just done things myself because that's how I had to do it myself. In my mental health and everything else, it's just you. And then letting go of it and actually realizing it's so counterproductive to try and do everything yourself, even with the charity stuff. Until a year or two ago, I was literally doing everything with it, and I knew I could hand stuff over, but mentally I just wasn't ready to, or I was worried, or I didn't. I just thought it'd be quicker if I did it myself, and then I'm up at spending 4 hours a night after work doing things that I shouldn't be doing, and admin, real stuff that people actually offered to help to do. And it's only recently I've realized that engaging more people like the barbecue hosts and like the people that are local community members, that one, get it, that two, you can spend a little bit of time with, and then they use that message the way it's not our template of a message. Here's your template, go and tell the people this, come from out of town and tell them how their mental health should be and how they should talk to reach out. And it doesn't come off right. And the most successful barbecue hosts we have do that just so well. Like, they literally know their community inside out, and they'll do anything for them. And they're always coming up with ideas, and they're always bouncing ideas off me. And now I'm like, go free. Like, you're better than me at this, so just run with it. And I love that. It's a really good. I love the fact you highlighted that local connection. I think it's somewhere we have to start more. I think that's a really lovely way to round it off, about local connection, champions, leaders, and identifying those people that can do it. Because I have the sort of, I guess, the idea and the strategy and the heart, but I'm not that local leader, if you see what I mean. So I think it truly is going together as a team and as a cohort. And it's a slow game. It's a very slow game, but it's a worthwhile one, I think, planting those seeds. What I normally do, rounding off, sort of ask you, how does people find out about It's a Blokes Lunch, or anything else you want to plug? Far away. How can the audience find out?
So the best way to connect with It's a Blokes Lunch Facebook page. We've got an Instagram account, all It's a Blokes Lunch in one word, and our website www.itsablokes.lunch.com. On there, we have listed our other initiatives that we've grassrooted and obviously who we've connected with. Some of the other sort of grassroots connections that we're launching soon, hopefully actually next week, is we're sort of just finishing up the final touches on our Barstool Blokes sort of facilitated program. So the Blokes, a big one, which will be setting up those local catch-ups in other areas around New South Wales, Australia, etc., depending on how many people want to connect to events. It's a pretty easy one. With that, we're wanting to train up people to then also deliver talks. I'm as a mental health first aid instructor, I'm capable of doing that in delivering sort of nationally accredited course in that sense. And then certainly we have a few things like the podcast coming out as well. So having those regular conversations with Barstool Blokes, and also It's a Blokes Chat, which is our mini Blokes Lunch event that we're sort of regularly going to put out every couple of months. So we've had to put it on hold for now because of COVID, but we're looking at launching that as a virtual event in the coming sort of months. And I still intend to do a Blokes Lunch somehow this year. It will definitely be a virtual event, so it might be just me having a yarn. No, we'll definitely be reaching out to a couple of good mates of mine to be some guest speakers. So once that's finalised, I'll definitely let you know.
Please do, mate. Yeah. No, I was already. I'd love to come, mate, as well. Or I'd love to attend. I guess I would have preferred to have been there in person. I think it would have been cracking. But look, thank you just from me, one, for coming on, but two, the work you're doing. You're a busy man, clearly, but like most people that are really passionate about what you do, like you haven't let COVID stop anything.
Yeah.
You're still dreaming, you're still doing, you're still planning, and I think it's just incredible what you're doing. And I will share the links to the website and everything in the comments, and I'll do a separate post as well so our community can check out what you're doing. And look, I'm sure we'll be chatting more soon as well, and any ways we can help and collaborate would be amazing too, mate. So thank you so much, Josh. Really appreciate it, mate.
I guess one final thing I wanted to share with you is
go for it.
Professionally, I'm actually soon launching a men's specific telehealth service. So once that's up and running, I'll let you know. But thanks for having me on, and for the time to have a chat to yourself, have a chat to the guys in the network.
Mate, it's always a pleasure, and I'm never sort of I'm always surprised each week now that new topics of conversation come up. I was always worried when I had these chats that it might just descend into talking about, isn't it bad? Isn't men's health bad? And I am completely amazed every week. I get something out of this so much. It really does refuel my energy. So I'm personally grateful as well, mate. And I'm sure it does to the people watching. So take care. And we'll share that info with our community as well.
Awesome. All right.
Thanks, buddy. See you, mate.